Foreign trade is central to the process of globalization. It is equally vital for the Indian economy. But our exports appear to be not only down but also out if we go by the recent data. One of the proven instruments to boost up exports is to have a matrix of carefully crafted free trade agreements. India had signed as many as 22 such agreements and many are in the pipeline. But one question which seems to be bothering the policymakers and also the industry and trade is whether India has given too much in return for too less. Several UN reports have given a grim warning that North-South bilateral FTAs are impacting the national policy-making capacity of developing countries. So, is the Indian government acknowledging this reality? If yes, then how exactly India is preparing for mega FTAs with EU and Australia? To answer these questions, we now turn to our panelists in the studio.
Hello and welcome to Simply Intoxicating. Today we are going to focus on an important aspect of international trade diplomacy which is much talked about but less understood. Yes, it is free trade agreements or FTAs. This month, the NDA government postponed the highly desired EU FTA talks when EU abruptly banned 700 Indian drugs. So what does it mean? Is India heralding into a new era of trade diplomacy? Can we finally say that India is no longer willing to compromise its interests for gaining membership into an elite trading bloc? Recently, the Modi government also set up a high-powered committee to be chaired by the Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Arvind Subramaniam, to look into the trade agreement to identify areas that need a review or maybe even renegotiation. Perhaps there is nothing to review as even similar exercises have also been undertaken in the past. But the foundings were always shrouded in secrecy. While on one hand, we certainly need to carefully review the past, the FTAs, the larger question is what should be our approach towards the FTAs in the pipeline? Does India need to construct a long-term strategy? To discuss all these issues, we have a panel of 3 experts with us. We have Mr. T.S. Vishwanath, former journalist turned trade policy strategist. We have Mr. Gautam Khattar, partner PwC. And finally, we have Mr. M.K. Gupta, former Chief Commissioner of Customs and Central Excise. So, let me start with you. So, I'll begin with Sir you. This free trade agreement started way back in 1991 as the lookest policy of the government, of the then government. And since then, we have entered into various FTAs. So, can you give us a holistic picture of these FTAs? How much we have actually gained or we have actually lost?
We have to examine each FTA with different countries. For example, we have comprehensive FTA with Japan.
Right, sir.
In 2010-11, the exports to Japan were around 5.5 billion and imports from Japan were 8.6 billion. Therefore, trade deficit was 3.6. As on today, in 2014-15, exports are 5.38 billion and imports are 10.13 billion. It means trade deficit has increased from 3 billion to 10 billion. But to say that it has adversely affected the India, it will not be correct. Because we have to see there are so many Japanese companies who are manufacturing the goods in India. They import components and inputs from Japan. In 2010-15, for example, say Maruti, its production, say 1 lakh car, their imports were 100 million. Now their production is 2 lakhs cars. Therefore, their imports will be more. Similarly, this applies to other Japanese companies also who have based their manufacturing factories here in India. So to say that it is adversely affecting the trade deficit has increased, it will not be correct. And one has to see what was the India GDP in 2010-11, what was the ratio of imports, whole imports and imports from Japan. That will, if you take in those percentage terms, you will find it is not adversely affecting.
Your point well taken, sir. Mr. Gautam, what are your views on this?
So, to start from a perspective of FTA, I think one will need to look at the objective largely has been to grow the export. So it is like FTA is based on the theory of absolute advantage to a country. So if there is a manufacturing base, we have looked at those products and looked at how we could bring those into the FTA to capture the export market. Now, the trend has shown that, in some of the cases, again, as an example, if you look at the Korea FTA, the exports have actually reduced from a 13 to 9% currently to 14-15. So yes, we have not been able to meet the objectives of growing the
Exports.
Yeah, so that is on the negative side if you look at. Also, our FTA focus has largely been with the Asian countries. Second, we have also looked at some Oriental countries like Korea. So we are missing the larger chunk of FTAs which the North America is also looking at, and Mexico is part of that agreement. So, Mexico in terms of just will have a global better advantage than India if they are part of that agreement. So second point is that yes, we have looked at agreements around the Asia Pacific. So we need to look at in a much broader sense and with more developed countries to really get larger benefits. And then largely there is a trade diverting effect which will happen. So if Mexico becomes part of the North America, so a lot of trade gets away from Mexico to. So that's something which we need to think about as we go along the FTAs. Future FTAs. Having said that, I think there is at least a lot which has happened in terms of market access. We have looked at FTAs are benefiting. We have services which are forming part of FTAs. So India being a growing economy in terms of services. So that is definitely a positive and something which is adding on to the FTAs.
You have raised several issues, so we'll keep coming back to all of these issues one by one. So what are your views on this? I mean, do you concur with this or do you subscribe to this concern of the government of India?
In my view, I think what the FTAs have primarily done, we need to look at why did we get into these FTAs. The FTAs was part of a larger geopolitical strategy of looking east, and which is now, of course, in the current government changed to Act East. And we started signing up these FTAs with Japan, Korea, with ASEAN, and then we also looked at ASEAN plus with some of the few countries like from Singapore to Malaysia to now we're looking at Indonesia and Thailand. So what has primarily happened is that the FTAs, from an economic perspective, when you move out of the geopolitical sphere and you move into the economic sphere, there are basically three things which an FTA is expected to achieve. One, it's supposed to help provide greater regional value chains. Now, in my perspective, yes, I think we have at least been able to get it into the different companies that they need to start looking at investments into those places and they need to create value chains across those areas. For instance, in the textile industry, there has now been a huge clamor of trying to build value chains with Vietnam. Now, for this, the real reason why we are doing it is because I think there's a feeling that we can use the India-ASEAN FTA to do that.
Correct.
Beyond the value chains, the other two things which we are looking at is trying to help people-to-people contact, which, as Mr. Gupta rightly pointed out, is leading to much higher investments. Now, we are seeing much greater investments coming in from those countries. We are seeing a lot more growth which is happening between those countries. Now, if we start looking at the FTA just from the primary point of view of saying are imports rising, are exports going down, are we doing this? I think we are taking just a single pillar of the FTA in a very narrow perspective.
So, but my concern is how is this review exercise going to be different from the previous review exercise? I mean, the reviews have been done in the past also, and a very strange thing happened recently. The Commerce Ministry has clarified its stand that irrespective or rather independent of this review exercise, we are going ahead with the FTAs which are under the negotiation, which are in the pipeline, and we did not wait for this review exercise to be concluded. Whereas the Modi government, they have set up a body, a committee for review all this FTAs.
So, frankly, the way I look at it is the following. A review for any FTA is an ongoing process. Every FTA, if you read the lines there, you will find that there is a 2-year review for every FTA. So, review is nothing new for an FTA. I think what the current government, the NDA government, when it came into power, what they primarily said was we need to see what are we really gaining out of these FTAs. And how can we greater optimize this to get greater gains out of these FTAs? Exactly. And that's an ongoing process. Now, what I think the Commerce Ministry has primarily come out and said, this is how I read it, and the way I read the way Commerce Ministry has said, is that there is nothing of concern for us to stop everything and then start saying, do we need to take a relook at it? What they are saying is it's a continuous process. So, while simultaneously we are going ahead with it, while we are trying to see how do we get the optimum out of most of these FTAs. So, that's how I seriously read.
Your views on this? I mean, this review mechanism.
It's a very important step which needs to be taken on periodic basis. just some of the points which come about is one, because there are goods, again, as an example, which you look at the Indo-Thai Framework Agreement which was signed. So there are goods which come in, and there is a debate by the Indian manufacturers that they are being harmed because the finished, it results in basically inverted duty structure, resulting in finished products coming at a cheaper price than imported. So those are finer aspects which will come out. And again, I agree that it's not that you need to stop everything and start reviewing it. It's a process, it's a journey. You will always, on day one, when you have looked at your industry, you have put in certain framework and put in certain goods and services. As you go along, when there is a full value chain, your Indian economy is, there is maturity, there is more manufacturing. So therefore, you'll have to look at with fresh eyes as you go along.
Sir, you would like to share your views on this?
I'll say FTA, they should be look for whether we will gain some investments or not. For example, suppose between A and B, there is a FTA. On shoes, say there is 0 rate of duty. This example has been given by the Ministry of Commerce itself. From shoes importing from Canada, it is 20% rate of duty. So Canada will like to establish a factory, invest in either A or B, so that they can take the benefit. So this leads to investments also.
So you gave an example of the Indo-Japan FTA, but how about the other FTAs? Have they actually resulted in this FDI, this investments, the setting up industries in India, transfer of technology?
No, so far, one of the most important FDA in India is this ASEAN, where 11 countries, including India, are involved. If you see their statistics, export statistics from India, it came into existence in 2009 and came into effect from 2010 onwards. 2003-04 exports to this region, and this region is the 7th largest in GDP terms, 4th largest in terms of imports and exports, and there are 600 million consumer base. So this is a very important region. This ASEAN is a very important region from trade point of view. So in 2003-04, India's export to these regions were 5.8 billion only. 2007-8, 8-9, it was 19 billion. After coming into effect of this FTA, in 2014-15, exports are around 32 billions. So these exports have increased more than 50%, more than 70%. These agreements pertain to the goods only. And now government has entered into an agreement with these Asian countries where the services and investment, other things will also be applicable.
Part of the FTAs now.
That service thing will give a lot of benefit to the country. Unfortunately,
so that was actually going to the next question, that India is known for its contribution in the service sector, and WTO ranks as the 7th largest producer of services. How much we have actually gained from after the inclusion of services in the FTAs, or how much we have actually successfully able to bargain in these FTAs to achieve a greater access in terms of services?
No.
I can give you an examples of the India-Singapore FTA, where the Indian banks are still facing problem to get license in Singapore. So there is a issue of reciprocity in some of the FTAs.
that will be there, but Singapore, if you see their trade balance, imports are just 5 billion, exports are 12 billion. This initial hiccups will be there in service sector. For example, for these Asian countries, we have entered into a service sector in September 2014. It will give the impact later on.
It will take
but
time.
But in FTA, we have not been able to become part of national supply chain in this FTA because of this 5 distortion in the Indian economy.
For 6 months, Legal Wrangle has relentlessly served you vital judicial decisions in the taxation domain. But our viewers want more. Now, Legal Wrangle broadens its horizons into the corporate realm. We shall bring you cases pertaining to Companies Act, Competition Act, capital market rulings and much more. Please stay connected for our soon to be announced first episode of Legal Wrangle on corporate laws.
I mean, sir has cited so many statistics that the export has increased, but still there is a huge, prevalence of the local industry, the manufacturing sector, especially the SMEs, that they have lost out because of these FTAs. I mean, the imports have increased and their exports have gone down. And recently the draft national strategy on manufacturing, it has actually pointed out some errors which has actually resulted in that inverted duty structure. So on one hand, there are statistics where the exports have we have gained, but on the other hand, the Indian manufacturing sector, or is it the case that the Indian manufacturing sector is not competitive enough, and rather these FTAs have actually exposed our lack of efficiency?
Frankly, I look at it I think your points are very valid in terms of saying that there has been, the smaller industry has certainly come out and said that they have been hurt quite badly by the imports that are coming in. But I think if you closely hear what they are saying, they seem to be more upset about China rather than they are about any of the other FTA partners, because the products which all these small manufacturers are talking about, or the medium-sized manufacturers are talking about, are products which are coming more out of China. With China, we of course have an APTA, and where there are some products, about over 200 products, which have been put on the list of for tariff reduction. But otherwise, it's only going to come under the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, as we keep talking about. When that comes about is when we really would have an FTA with China. So their concern, I think, is that they are of course raising their voice, but their concern comes more out of China. That is one. I mean, I don't think it is really the FTA partners who are seriously hurting them. But yes, there are certain ASEAN countries, which especially the CMLV countries, which do have a capacity to hurt the small and medium industry in India. And we really need to I don't think a serious analysis has still been done. I don't think even the government has done that. I mean, or maybe they have, to look at, are these the products, whichever they're talking about at an 8-digit level, are these products seriously coming from them? I haven't seen any such data in the public domain, so that's from where I'm coming from. I've done some bit of analysis myself, and I don't see that impact happening, so that's the reason why I'm stating what I'm stating. But what has seriously happened because of these FTAs, I think, is the fact that there has been a growing competitiveness among the Indian small and medium manufacturers. If you seriously realize, one of the biggest things that the FTAs is going to achieve is harmonization of standards and regulations across the countries. And there has to be much more mutual recognition. I mean, you were asking Mr. Gupta the question about services. Frankly, I think there is a misnomer in my view, where there is a feeling that if you gaining something in goods, you can give something up in services. And there should be a kind of, across.
Because I mean, the saying goes that the losses that we have incurred in terms of manufacturing and goods sector, that can be offset by the gains in the service sector.
But I don't think we can seriously do that within an FTA. In my humble view, that we need to look at it as different verticals. And what has unfortunately happened is the other FTA partner with whom we have really negotiated have not been strong in services. So if you look at any of our FTA documents, you will not see a very strong services element within that, other than Malaysia, with whom we have been able to move. The reason is, India seems to have continuously focused on, as you know, there are 4 modes of supply. It's called mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4.
Right.
Mode 1, of course, is cross-border, which is whatever are the BPO services. Mode 2 being, mode 3 and mode 4 are the more important ones for us, which is commercial presence and the movement of natural persons. So primarily when we're looking at, India seems to have focused more on mode 4. Because for the simple reason, we believe that we need more people to go out and work. But I think the way Indian economy has now emerged, we are equally serious about mode 3. What you talked about as an example when you were asking Mr. Gupta the question about the Indian banks wanting to set up in Singapore has nothing to do with mode 4.
Nothing.
Looking at mode 3. But India has not made any strong requests in terms of looking at mode 3.
Right.
So I think we need to balance mode 3 and mode 4 and bring in mode 1.
So I go with the point that, it's one of the cheap imports or which are actually raising these concerns from the medium sector over here rather than the FTAs. And there are measures like anti-dumping.
I was actually about to ask that how successfully we have been able to invoke the anti-dumping duties, especially in the context of China.
I think from what we've seen in terms of anti-dumping, it is to me it seems it's been very successful. There have been a lot of in terms of the notifications, in terms of coverage, you keep seeing them every fortnight. There is notifications coming, and there is a very stringent review process which keeps happening.
But then China drags India also to the WTO forum.
Yes, so that debate is going on. But if I'm just looking from your question of the small and medium scale sector, how are they impacted and the concern to a FTA? I think that's not from an FTA perspective. The analysis would need to be looked at what is the origin of those products. Some of them would frankly not be forming part of the FTAs also. So it's because of the products and where they are coming and how they are priced. And for that, the government has a mechanism, and they have been very actively using that.
Sir, another this trend is setting in of these bilateral treaties, and even the WTO reports have acknowledged this thing, that the number of bilateral treaties, they're much more, and because of these trade talks, the Doha round talks, they are held up since ages, since decades. So the countries find it more wiser to enter into bilateral treaties and get their issues sorted out.
I think the WTO is where it is because when we started the Doha round in 2001, we frankly took on a lot more than what we can chew. So I think there's too much on the plate, and we decided to do it with 2005. So we seriously didn't have. And then the WTO, of course, has this whole problem of a single undertaking and complete consensus, which means every country has to agree to whatever has been said, and all things have to be added. But I think that kind of was broken in the Bali Ministerial, where they took out trade facilitations, they took it out of the single undertaking, and they brought it out, and then now we seem to be moving ahead on trade facilitation. But of course, because countries like India wanted a balance, and we brought in issues such as food security, so there has been some movement. But in the last 2 months, you would have also noticed that the ITA 2 has got signed. India, of course, is not a party to it because we don't find it useful, but 54 countries have signed the ITA 2. And then there is something called the Trade and Services Agreement, which is TISA, which is outside the WTO, but it is the WTO countries which are negotiating it, which is also happening. So there is movement happening in Geneva, and hopefully what we understand from whatever I have heard from what's happening in Geneva is hopefully at the Kenya Ministerial there could be some progress. So I mean, I think as Mark Twain said many years back, I think there's obituary about the reports about WTO being dead are highly exaggerated. So I don't think the WTO is dead. It's still very much there. But I think what the WTO has frankly done is has been able to bring out the animal within the countries to try and negotiate for trade agreements.
So WTO itself provides the exception to that MFN principle. The WTO itself promotes.
Absolutely, Article 15 provides that the whole area of looking at it is when we look at the FTAs and when we look at it from that point of view, I think all the countries have realized that there is a possibility of getting to do far more with trade liberalization, because everybody wants to liberalize, but there are domestic politics that the trade agreements help you in putting the pressure to kind of liberalize and take the route towards reforms. So I think every country takes that. I mean, that's in my humble opinion, that's what's happening. That most people think that you can use the pressure of a bilateral or a multilateral negotiations to take the reform route. So there has been a sudden surge. Second, if you seriously notice over the last 5-7 years, see, when did this whole movement towards FTA start? When the economy was peaking across the globe. But in the last 5-7 years, all the countries which are negotiating FTAs, you look at their GDP growth. Other than maybe Indonesia, Philippines, and a few countries like that, India, of course, India and China being having some growth, most of the other countries have not witnessed the kind of growth which they would have liked. So that's why you'll find the mega free trade agreements or even the free trade agreements which are being signed are getting delayed, except for things like China, Australia, which has happened for the simple reason Australia sees a huge gain. Australia is one of the few countries which has a trade surplus with China for the simple reason they sell all the minerals for promoting them. So other than some kind of FTAs which have happened like that, majority of the FTAs have slowed down.
Absolutely. Now, sir, I'll come to the most burning issue recently. I mean, this India-EU FTA, I mean, which is going on since 2007, and recently the government has further postponed because EU abruptly banned 700 Indian drugs. Now, coming to the demands of the EU that to extending the patent protection period, data exclusivity, and because India doesn't have a data secure status, which is again another requirement. So India has to change overall its existing laws and several other issues, and these are mostly non-negotiable from the EU side. Now, India also has a concern not only to protect the generic industry, but also to there is a big agreement which is going to be entered between EU and US. So India has to protect its share in the European market also. So how do you actually see?
A lot of progress that's happened, except in a couple of areas. And the couple of areas are tariff reductions, which ranges from cars, that is passenger cars to others, and to some dairy products where the EU wants far more access than us. Two is in the area which you're talking about in terms of data exclusivity and in terms of
Because some critics have even say it is ushering in the TRIPS plus regime if India goes
absolutely.
sanctioning.
So that's from an Indian perspective, that's a matter of concern. So we have now covered a lot of water in the last so many years of the negotiations that we have seriously done. But I think what we are talking about is something we can seriously, it's not something which is unsurmountable. And I think the EU knows what the Indian concerns are.
On a frank note, sir, can EU afford to, let go this FTA with India?
It's not a question of affording. I think it's more a question of them wanting it. They can, they are doing the TTIP, which is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership in the US,
Yes, right.
which is of course a mega free trade
Mega
agreement,
free trade
and they're talking to Korea, they're talking to others. So they have their own FTAs happening. So I don't think we should look at it that will EU seriously can it afford it, but the issue is they want it.
We'll go to the last question, that is, there are several FTAs which are in the pipeline. We are in the negotiation stage with Australia, with Canada, with USA. So, what should be what do we learn from our past experience?
One is India should really focus on services in the newer agreements to see how best we can get the most away in this area. In terms of goods, the concept of inverted duty structure, that should be kept in mind while negotiating. You see that fact, and therefore the exchange of the schedule which we are going to exchange for goods should factor that we do not come into an inverted duty structure. The third is, and was mentioned, was the entire value chain.
See, the two big ones which are in the offing immediately. One is with Australia and the other is with Canada. They are both agriculturally very strong.
Very strong, right.
And I think that remains a concern. And
that is where we are lacking like anything.
Absolutely. So I think that's one area where we will seriously need technical help from both these countries if we are seriously interested in looking at having an FTA with them. I think what we may seriously want to look at in these FTAs is to try and say that, because we have now a slightly growing agricultural exports market. We do have some of the APIDA is looking into that. So we need to start looking at some technical support from them because they're really good in the agricultural area. So what is it that they can really provide us in terms of helping us grow our agricultural
Exactly.
exports is something, and then we look at reciprocity. So that's one thing which I seriously want to look at. The second, there are both countries where services are an extremely important element, and Gautam mentioned it also, and he said that services have to remain a very important one, is to try and see what is it that we can seriously get out of services. And I frankly believe that we can't keep focusing only on mode 4, but at the same time, it cannot be just mode 3 which they want. 3, I think we need to go ahead and get this because Australia is again very good in terms of its natural resources. It already has an FTA with China. So we already have a natural disadvantage now when we are exporting to Australia because China gets an easier access, we do not get an easier access. So I think not that we are going to compete with China, but the very fact that if you want to remain in the Australian market, I think we seriously do need an FTA with Australia. But at the same time, not at any cost. We need to ensure that what we want out of the FTA is something which we seriously get back as well.
Having heard the views of our 3 panelists, it can be safely concluded that FTAs are not crucial just for trade and commerce, but also for geopolitical reasons. They are needed not only for greater market access, investments, but also to become a part of the international value chain. Also, one cannot afford to ignore the risk of trade diversion in this dynamic world. Several critical suggestions have been made by our panelists today, like India should aggressively pursue greater access to international service sector in the future FTA talks, strike a healthy balance between Mode 3 and Mode 4 services, and bargain harder for technical aid from future FTA partners like Australia and Canada. Coming to the domestic setup, we need to remove distortion like inverted duty structure, ensure greater participation of the industry, and finally improving the overall competitiveness of the local industry by harmonizing them with the international standards. While it is true that review of FTAs is an ongoing exercise to ensure a dynamism in our policies, some experts may even like to believe that this is merely routine in nature. However, one cannot ignore the conspicuous, cautious approach of the present government in the context of FTA talks. Moreover, the best way to rest all speculation would be to publish a white paper of this review exercise in the public domain. At the end, FTAs are neither about win-win situation nor absolute advantages, but about skilled international trade diplomacy of trade-offs and protecting vital interests. We hope that the Modi government displays such skills in future FTAs. Thank you for watching.